Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
This is Station. We're ready for the event.
Challenger Learning Center, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is Eli Davies from the Challenger Learning Center of Maine. How do you hear me?
Hello, Eli. We have you loud and clear. We're so excited to be talking to my home state today. Go Maine.
Greetings, astronauts. The Challenger Learning Center of Maine is proud to be calling you from the Harriet Beecher Stowe Elementary School in Brunswick, Maine. We're especially proud to be connecting to you from Jessica's home state today. I'll now hand it over to our first student question.
Hello, my name is Ronan, and my question is, what do you think about the new species of bacterium that was discovered on the ISS?
Well, I think that that's a loaded question because, of course, I was personally pretty excited about that one. It was discovered by a whole team of researchers that worked together to characterize it. And one of those was a colleague and a friend of mine from when I studied at the International Space University. So I was quite surprised when just a few months ago I got an email from him telling me that they had named this new species of microbacterium after me, Microbacterium miri. So that was really a huge honor and quite a surprise. And, you know, of course, it's really exciting to be associated as a biologist with a new species.
Hi, my name is Eli, and my question is, if something breaks on the outside of the station, like a solar panel or a cooling line, how do you decide who goes on the spacewalk to fix it?
Thanks for the question, Eli. And actually, just 2 days ago, Jessica and I were outside the space station on a spacewalk, not to fix something broken, but to actually do an upgrade to the space station to help put some new solar panels out there. And it gets decided, just like a lot of other things, by our bosses. They kind of look at us and say, and we're all trained to do spacewalks, but they try to look at who has experience, and we want to get everybody experienced in spacewalks so that everybody knows how to do them. Jessica had been on several before, and this was my first one, so I got to learn a whole lot from her.
Hi, my name is Lucas, and how long did it take to build the ISS?
Hi, Lucas. It took a long time to build the ISS. The very first module was launched in 1998, and we kind of added, it was kind of like a Lego set where we built it and launched module after module and part after part, and then we assembled it in space station to make it bigger and bigger and bigger. So it started from just one module, and now it has grown to what you now know as a space station. It was considered assembly complete in 2011, so really that's 13 years. But since 2011, we've also made a lot of changes, upgrades, kind of like similar to the one Chris was just talking about, moving things around, getting new test beds, new pieces of hardware. So it's continually changing, but we did consider it assembly complete back in 2011.
Hello, my name is John, and what are the qualifications to become an astronaut?
Hey, John, thanks for the question. So astronauts come from all sorts of different backgrounds, but the basic qualification is to have an advanced degree in some sort of science or technology or engineering or type of a field. But we have astronauts that come from pilot backgrounds, medical doctors, biologists, physicists, all sorts of engineers, all sorts of different backgrounds.
Hello, my name is Ruby, and my question is, can you control gravity on the spaceship?
Oh, thanks for that question, Ruby. That would be nice. It's not something that we can control. As you can see here, Chris and I are just floating around because we are experiencing what we call microgravity. And really what that means is we do have gravity. We are under the influence of gravity because if we weren't, we would be flying far beyond Earth. We are actually still subjected to Earth's gravity, and it's continually pulling us back. But at the altitude which we are, about 250 miles, we are basically continuously falling back to Earth. We just never actually hit Earth. We just keep moving around it. And because the space station is in that same orbit, everything around us is falling at the same rate, and that's how we experience what we call the microgravity force. I know in a lot of science fiction movies and maybe books you've read about, they actually create artificial gravity by using centrifuge type forces in order to spin something. That has been done a lot in the movies and TV, but nobody has done it quite yet in reality. It's definitely theoretically possible, but it's a very difficult engineering and logistical challenge.
I'm Charlotte, and why do you do tests on plants in space? What's the difference compared to testing them on Earth?
Hey, Charlotte, thanks for the question. So one of the big problems as we try to explore further and further out beyond Earth is how do we get food? And so understanding how plants grow in the environment where there's, where we're all falling or microgravity is a bit of a challenge. And the more we can learn about that, the better. And it also just helps us understand how biology works, how do plants figure out which ways to grow, which way is up. And so we can learn a lot of things both to help us do further space exploration, but also just to fundamentally understand biology better. And also, I think Jessica can attest to this. I think it's also kind of just delicious.
Yeah, absolutely. I was very excited during my last mission when we actually grew Mizuna lettuce. It's kind of like a tasty mustardy green lettuce. And we were looking at different wavelengths of light. So like Chris alluded to, for future long duration and further destinations like Mars, we're going to need to have a sustainable food source. We're not going to be able to launch and bring all the food and supplies that we need. So we need to understand how to grow things in space. So we were actually comparing two different wavelengths of light, one that was more red and one that was more blue on these two different types of lettuce. And then we were also comparing some differences in the types of soil in which they were growing to see, what would work the best in microgravity. And it was so nice to have this living entity, this green living entity on the space station, because as you can see, it's this pretty white, austere, sterile environment. So it was so nice to have something alive that we were taking care of and watering every day. And the best part for me, on the ground, I eat fresh salad pretty much every day. And at the end of the experiment, we had to harvest it and send back half of it down to Earth so the scientists could analyze it. But we got to keep half of it and have a salad. And that was really fun because we don't have a lot of fresh food up here, as you might imagine. So it was a real treat. And part of that experiment was also a psychological one where they were trying to characterize the psychological impact of having something green and growing. And I can tell you, it definitely made me happy.
Hi, my name is Cutler. What is your favorite place to see on Earth from the International Space Station?
That's a great question, Cutler. So I know for me, I don't have one favorite place. I mean, it's always nice to see home, and to see Houston where I live now, and where I can see where my family is at the moment. But for me, the most magical thing is seeing all of the different places on Earth and how beautiful. Every area of Earth has something different and beautiful about it, and it really makes me want to travel and explore the world a lot more when I get home.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how many different colors and textures there are, even different types and shapes and colors of sand dunes. I had no idea until I saw from space that there were so many different types and textures of sand dunes, especially in places like Africa and in the Middle East. But I'll have to say, for you guys especially, my absolute favorite place to see from up here is the state of Maine.
Hi, my name is Silas, and I was wondering if there were microplastics in space from the space station or other debris.
Hey, Silas. So there are actually lots of little pieces of debris in space. Some may have come from the space station, but others come from satellites and that sort of thing. And there's actually thousands of little pieces of debris. And we actually look at them and try to track them so that we can make sure they're not going to hit, our space station or other satellites. And sometimes we actually have to adjust the orbit of our space station to avoid it. At the orbit that our space station is, there's actually still a little bit of atmosphere, and so every once in a while we need to boost our space station up to stay in orbit. But what that means is a lot of the debris that's in the orbit around our space station will eventually fall down to the atmosphere and burn up due to just that little bit of atmosphere that slows it down.
And in terms of microplastics, like the microplastics we worry about ingesting and being in our bodies, like on Earth, that's certainly something that we're still subjected to up here. Something we were just talking about the other day, a lot of our food is actually packaged in plastic, and then we actually add water to it and heat up the plastic, which is really the recipe to ingest a lot of microplastics on the ground, as I'm sure that you've heard about. So we're certainly adding to our microplastic load by being up here, just as we are in a lot of examples on Earth as well.
Hi, I'm Ingrid, and my question is, as an astronaut, you have a lot of training to know what to expect, but what was the biggest surprise when you were actually in space?
We have so much training on the ground. We spend years training before we come up here. So we're more than prepared for all of the difficult technical things that we do on the space station, things like spacewalks, like Chris was talking about. But the one thing that you can't really train for is just how it feels to live and work in microgravity. To just put something and let go of something and it floats in front of you, and that makes the really daily life things really difficult at first when you arrive. I like to describe it like being a newborn, because we get to the space station and we don't know how to go to the bathroom, we don't know how to eat, we don't know how to drink, because all of those things require quite a bit of brain power to figure out how to do correctly when you're in microgravity. So it wasn't really a huge surprise, because I had known about that from other people, but you can't prepare for it. So there is this surprising element of just what it's like to have everything floating around you.
Hi, I'm Perry. My question is, how much power does it take the ISS to go around the world?
Yeah, that's a great question, Perry. So because we're in orbit, it doesn't actually take a lot of energy to keep us going. Occasionally, we have to do little boosts with our rockets, but we do have big solar panels on our station to try to keep everything up here powered and to conduct the science that we're doing. And so we have 8 big solar arrays on the outside of the station, and those provide something around 75 to 90 kilowatts of power. And on the spacewalk we just did 2 days ago, we put in some brackets, and in the fall, we're going to put on some additional solar arrays. They're going to boost that power by even another 20 to 30%.
Hi, I'm Diana. Have there been any astronauts with disabilities? How do they manage?
Hi, Diana. Unfortunately, we have not yet had any astronauts with disabilities on the International Space Station, but there probably will be soon. ESA, the European Space Agency, actually very recently conducted an effort called ESA Fly to select an astronaut with a disability to try to break down some of these barriers for the future for people with disabilities becoming astronauts. They selected a British astronaut named John McFall. He is a lower leg amputee, and he's actually, fun fact, a Paralympian. He won a medal in the Beijing Olympics for this Paralympian sprint. So incredible guy. We've gotten to work with him a little bit as well, and he has not yet flown, but should be flying in the future. There's also been a private astronaut, Haley Arsenault. She flew on Inspiration 4 in 2021 on a private space flight, and she was the first person to be in space with a prosthesis. She has a prosthetic knee and also a extending from the knee, she has another metal implant. So she was the very first to fly with a prosthesis, and then probably John McFall will be the second. So it's a really exciting time for us, I think, diversity-wise, as all of our international space programs continue to think about these things, about breaking down barriers and making space more accessible for everybody.
Hi, my name's Morel. How has seeing Earth from the ISS changed your view of our planet?
Hey, Morel. So I've always really felt that it's super important to protect our planet. but seeing it from space and seeing, so from up here you can really see the curvature of the Earth, and right above the edge of the curve, you can see this very thin layer of our atmosphere. And it's really reinforced to me how small and fragile our atmosphere is and everything that protects all of the life on Earth. And so for me, it's really cemented our need to protect our home planet and to keep it safe for all of us.
This question is asked by Una. How long is a day in space? Is it the same as Earth?
Well, yes and no. We plan our days in the same way, where we work on a normal 24-hour schedule. We have a work day, we have a certain sleep period. But because we're orbiting the Earth at 250 miles above where you guys are now, we actually go around the Earth every 90 minutes. So that means we have 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets per day. So it depends exactly how you define a day. But for us, we kind of define it on the same normal earthly basis, but we are spinning around the Earth much more frequently than that.
Hi, I'm Fiona. If you look to the sky longer and longer, you can see more stars. Can you see more stars when you're in space?
Hey, Fiona, that's a great question. So, yeah, as your eyes adjust, and especially if you're in a dark spot, you can see more and more and more stars. And being in space, up here, one of the nice things is when we're on the night side, we don't have a lot of light pollution, especially if we turn off all the lights around us. So it's like being in a super dark spot on Earth. So I would say that I can see as many stars from up here as I can from some of the darkest places I've ever been on Earth. And it's absolutely beautiful.
Abby asked, what's the prettiest thing you've seen in space?
Oh, Abby, that's a really interesting question because there's so many options. We see so many beautiful things, but I would say the most beautiful thing that we see is the Earth. And one of the things Chris and I have talked a lot about, and I've been trying to take some pictures of recently, are the aurora. The aurora are so incredible. That's the northern lights or the southern lights. And I think that you guys in Maine have had the opportunity to see some in really the recent year. Hopefully you've had the chance. I've never actually seen them from Earth, but we see them quite frequently from up here. And they are so impressive, even more impressive than seeing them on Earth, because you see them for miles and miles and miles and miles when you see them active in one area. And it's really just this otherworldly glow of this green dancing rays and of green, and then there are some reds and even some purples, and it's absolutely stunning. And like we talked about earlier, every different spot on the Earth has some different type of beauty. I love looking at the different textures and colors that I see, especially in desert areas, like I mentioned. Also the coastal areas where you can see the different colors of the water and the currents as they're coming closer to the land, and some turquoise colors like in the Bahamas. I mean, there are so many different colors and textures. It's really almost overwhelming.
Landon asks, what's the funniest thing that you have done in space?
Oh, that's a tough question. What's the funniest thing that I've done in space? I don't know. I think one of the funniest things, one of the things that I think is really hard here is losing things. And so I had a thing the other day where I put a bag of tea down on the table and was having a conversation with some of my crewmates, and then turned back and it was gone. And we were all just sitting around the table and it just disappeared from right in front of us. And it took us